So I want to begin by kind of doing a brief survey. Is there anybody here that's an only child? Are there any only children in the room here? Does everybody have a brother and sister here? You're not an only child. I know you. So how many of you are the oldest of your siblings? Anybody the oldest? Yes, very good. The most responsible of the bunch and the best looking. All right, anybody the youngest of the bunch? Yeah, we go to counseling because of you. And then anybody in the middle? Any middle? Yeah, you people got major issues. Major issues. Middle people have major issues. You know, we've been going through the book of Exodus, and this morning we're going to talk about Aaron. And Aaron is, if you don't know, is the brother to Moses. And we've been working our way through the book, and we spent the first 3 weeks really looking at the story as a whole. How does the story flow? And after we did that 3 weeks, we're going back through and saying, okay, instead of taking a look at it from a grand view, we're going to put our toes in the sand and really get a sense on what it was like for each person, each character. Now again, there's 2 million people, so there's probably 2 million stories, 2 million ways that the Exodus affected them, but we're going to take a look at some key people. And so the last 3 weeks we've been looking at Moses, because he's the primary character in the story. But there's a guy that comes up that walks with him through most of it, and that's the guy named Aaron. And I've got 3 brothers, believe it or not. I've got 3 brothers. I am the oldest. I have a younger brother. He's no, he's not the youngest. He would... I'm even confused about my own family. So I'm the oldest, and then I have a full-blooded brother named Bob. Many of you know him. He's a pastor over in Burns, Oregon, and doing a great job out there, having a lot of fun. Well, as much fun as you can have in Burns. That's what he's doing out there. And so he's out there. I have a half-brother. Now, he's a half-brother because when my mom and dad got divorced, my dad remarried a woman named Jerry, and she had a son named Dwayne. So he was my stepbrother, 3 months younger than me. And so we grew up together. Well, his biological dad, died while we were growing up. And so my dad adopted him. So he went from a stepbrother to a legal half-brother. And we're brothers, but if we stood next to each other, you would know that we don't look alike. He's about 6'4". He's a Marine Corps. He used to be a Marine Corps drill instructor. Now he's a recruiter for the National Guard. So he's Dwayne. So he lives in Grants Pass, and when I go down there every week, that's who I stay with. I stay with my brother and his family down there. Then I have another brother, which I haven't seen in probably 15 years. And so when my parents divorced, my dad married a woman named Jerry. I mentioned that to you. Well, my mom married a man named Jerry. Talk about creepy. Married a man named Jerry, and those two had a child together, and his name was Casey. Now, this guy, Jerry, my former stepfather, was really abusive, physically abusive. And so for years, I've just shut him out of my mind until one day, like I said, about 15 years ago, I was flying to Cincinnati, Ohio, because they had moved, my former stepfather and Casey had moved to Bedford, Indiana. Well, I was going to school in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is not much of a drive, 3 or 4 hours. And I'm on the flight, and God, I had to believe it's God. God put in my mind, he's like, hey, Mike, you should go visit your brother and your former stepfather. You should go visit Jerry and Casey. Which I just kind of laughed and I said, boy, I just had the stupidest idea to go visit this guy. I don't want to have anything to do with him. Well, make a long story short, when God sits on your chest, it's just one of those things, you know what I mean? I mean, God has a way. He's like a hen. He just sits on the eggs until you're going to do something. And so he was just like that. He was just sitting on me until I did this. And so I had a spare day between my last class and when I had to fly back to Oregon. So I rented a car, drove to Bedford, Indiana, met Jerry again after 20, 25 years really. And that's a different story altogether. But I wanted to find Casey, and his response was, well, he's kind of floating around town, but this would be the best place to find him. And so I went to that place and I found him. I took him to lunch. And that night, or the night before, he had slept in a Walmart bathroom. That's where he slept the night before. And so he was, needless to say, homeless and an addict, and that's my 4th brother. And I don't even know if he's alive. I haven't seen him in probably 15 years. Families are all different. And it's interesting, the biblical model that we have for family is all different. I know there is the Christian family, you know, mom, dad, 2.5 kids, you know, middle class, white, short hair family. That's the exception. The Christian family has Christ at the center of it, whatever the chaos looks like on the outside. And having brothers, and having these brothers all throughout my life, it's really challenging. It's challenging on a number of levels. And I think for Moses and Aaron, it would have been a challenging time. Remember, Moses was raised the first 40 years where? We remember this? Where was Moses raised? In Egypt, but where? In the creme de la creme. He lived in Pharaoh's household. Well, remember the story. Now, I should back up a little bit. Aaron is Moses' older brother. He's 3 years older. But Aaron is not the oldest of the siblings. Miriam is actually older than Aaron by 10 years. So just to give you a sense of context, as we read through the narrative of Exodus, you've got an 80-year-old Moses, 83-year-old Aaron, and a 93-year-old Miriam that are doing this whole Exodus experience. So Moses is really the young pup out of all of them, right? Now, Moses is born, and we remember the story. His mom and his dad look down, they see this beautiful child, and there's something within him. They go, wow, there's something really special about this kid, so they hide him for 3 months. So if this is the case, then Aaron, and I believe it is, Aaron is 3 years old, maybe on his way to 4 years old. And this little brother comes in the room, because there used to be two of them. Miriam, older sister, and then there's Aaron, and then Aaron becomes a middle child. I remember Noah, what he acted like when we brought Jonah home from the hospital. Noah stayed with my parents for a few days, and we, obviously gave birth to Jonah, and we brought him back home, and he was there for a couple days, and we brought Noah back to the house. I had never seen Noah act the way he did when he saw Jonah. I mean, remember that scene in The Exorcist where the head spun around and the green stuff poured out? I mean, it was so bad. When Noah saw the child, when he saw Jonah, it was so bad. I actually called my folks and said, what did you do to my son? I don't know what, he was horrible to him. Screaming, yelling, throwing temper tantrums. Now looking back, you're like, okay, wanting attention. I don't really care about all the reasons why. I just want him to stop, So it was one of those things that I imagine with Aaron. Moses is born, and for the first 3 months, it's hidden, he's a special child, and Aaron early on has some feelings. Because let's remember this, friends, as we read these stories, these are not flannel board cutouts that get stuck to a board. These are three-dimensional human beings with feelings and emotions. And so Aaron's watching this child be raised, and we remember after 3 months they can't hide the baby any longer, so they put the baby in this basket, put it in the river, and put it amongst the reeds, and Pharaoh's daughter finds it, and we remember the story. Miriam goes up to Pharaoh's daughter and says, hey, you need a nanny for this Hebrew baby, and she's like, yeah, I do. And said, well, I got the perfect person. She goes and gets her mom, and her mom becomes the nanny for Moses. So let's just picture this for a minute. Moses is adopted into Pharaoh's family, and so mom comes and acts as the nanny. Well, if the mom comes, guess who comes with the mom? The other kids. So you have Miriam, who is a 10-year-old daughter, and Aaron, who's 3, maybe going on 4 years old at this point, and Moses. Well, what do you think it would be like if your younger brother was seen as being adopted by Pharaoh, and you were seen as a slave child to a slave woman growing up? Like, let's say that your brother and you had 2 separate grandparents, and one set of grandparents were rich beyond imagination, and at Christmas time, those grandparents bought your brother a Ferrari when he turned 16. His grandparents did that. Your grandparents are dirt poor broke, and they can barely buy you a set of shoes. So at Christmas time, you get 4 pieces of Laffy Taffy. That is your gift for Christmas. Do you think there could be some animosity? Do you think there could be a struggle? as Aaron is watching his younger brother being treated as a god, as a prince, while Aaron, the older brother, is living as a slave. Now, I'm sure there are no oldest children here that feel as if their younger brothers get special treatment, right? No, nobody's feeling that, right? If you're the oldest one, everyone's like, no, that always happens. It's true. The youngest one always gets special treatment, right? Everyone's yes. So, I mean, yeah, it's true. So, but for Moses here you have this kid that was raised as one of Pharaoh's grandchildren, and you know that he's not. You know he's just like you, but he's treated so much better. Now again, you might say, Mike, where does it say this in the text? It doesn't. I just know life. I mean, come on, what would you feel? What would you think? So for the first 40 years of Moses' life, he lives as if he is Bill Gates' grandson, and he's your brother, and you're living, working the 9-to-5 blue-collar shift. He gets everything. Everything is handed to him. Well, at 40 years old, as we remember, Moses feels the calling on by God to go and rescue the people. And in so doing, he kills the Egyptian. Remember that? And then he books. And about age 40, he goes on the lam and runs to Midian. Runs away from his family, runs away from everybody. And for the next 40 years of his life, nobody hears from him. He just runs off, starts a family, and lives hundreds and hundreds of miles away from home. While Aaron is stuck at home, taking care of his sister, because he's the oldest son, taking care of his sister, taking care of his mom. Who knows where Dad's at in the picture at this point? Maybe he's died at this point. Who knows? Do you think Aaron might have a little bit of animosity towards old Moses? Maybe, is it a possibility? Let's just say, is it a possibility? I think it definitely would be. Because if I'm putting myself in Aaron's shoes, I'm like, this guy lived high on the hog, and then he bolts. And here we are stuck in slavery, working this pitiful job while Moses is off gallivanting in Midian, having a wife and kids and living this life out there. Well, what happens is Aaron is led into something pretty powerful, I believe. It says in Exodus chapter 4, verse 14, as Moses is talking to God, Aaron comes on the scene here in the story. So if you go to Exodus chapter 4, verse 14, as Moses is talking to God, we get this. The Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, "What about your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak well. He's already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you." Now go on down to verse 27. Then the Lord said to Aaron, "Go into the wilderness to meet Moses." So he met Moses at the mountain of God, and he kissed him. And then Moses told Aaron everything the Lord had sent him to say, and also about all the signs he had commanded him to perform. And Moses and Aaron brought together all the elders of the Israelites, and Aaron told them everything the Lord had said to Moses. And he also performed the signs before the people, and they believed. And when they heard that the Lord was concerned about them and had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshiped the Lord. So somewhere about, he's about 83 years old, God knocks on Aaron's door. "Hey, Aaron, your brother Moses, yeah, what about him? Yeah, I know where he's at. He's in the wilderness. I want you to go find him because I've got a special task for you to do." Now, it's my mind, Aaron's kind of like, okay, Lord, if that's what you want, I'll go do it. But I've got to go. How come Moses can't come here? This is family, right? How come I'm always having to go visit them? Why don't they come over here? He's the one that ran off. Aaron goes, meets with him, and they kiss. Now you might say, "Oh, Mike, well, that's a sign." Well, that's a normal thing that they would do, that they would kiss, And it could be that there was a sign of, "Wow, it's good to see you again." If you haven't been with someone for 40 years, and the first 40 you didn't like him, the second 40 you haven't seen him, it is kind of awkward, right? We talk about burying the hatchet unless the handle's still sticking up out of the ground, right? And so, "Hey, how's it going? Good. How are things? Last 40 years, oh, the weather's been nice in Egypt, what do you talk about?" It's like, well, Moses says to him, "Hey, so I had this experience with God, and here's the deal. God says, I'm going to lead the Hebrews out of Egypt. Yeah, right. Yeah, and you're going to be my spokesperson. I'm going to be in charge. You just have to tell people what I say. Now, who's the older brother? Aaron. I always feel like the relationship between, at least from Aaron's perspective, the relationship between Aaron and Moses is similar to David Spade and Chris Farley and Tommy Boy. You know, I think, any of you know that movie? Okay, yes, you know what I'm saying? It's like he's having to put it together for this guy because he acts kind of as like a White House press secretary for old Moses. So Moses has an experience with God and then says, all right, so Aaron, I want you to tell the people that this is what we're going to do. You're going to do what? Yeah, this is what we're going to do. So Aaron has to stand up amongst the people and say, hey, everybody gather around, gather around, gather around. So Moses had an experience with God, and this is what God says. We're going to cross the Red Sea, for example. And so when all the flack comes, who has to take the flack? Aaron does. He's the press secretary. You ever seen those before, right? Obama makes decisions, or the president makes decisions, and when he makes decisions, the press secretary has to come out and tell the people what it's going to be. Who has to answer the questions? Press secretary does. Who's answering the questions here? Aaron has to answer all the questions. What's Moses doing? Oh, he's back in some tent hanging out with God, whatever that means. And so he's having to deal with all the flack. Who's the older brother? Aaron. Who seems to be getting away with everything? Moses. First 40 years, he's driving in the Mercedes-Benz. I'm driving on some burro. And here it is now. He's just off there doing his thing. And here I am having to answer all these questions. You may say, Mike, I don't see this in the text. Well, I'll tell you what. If you were him, what would you think? You don't think there's even a part that has a little bit of resentment to it? So they get through the Red Sea and they come out the other side. Now, when they come out the other side, if you remember, we talked about this a few weeks ago, the first thing they hit is this spot of bitter water. They're thirsty, and so there's the water of Elim, and that doesn't go so well, but Moses makes it right through throwing the stick in the water. They're thirsty, they're hungry, so the manna and quail come up. And then we get to this spot. It's really interesting down in Exodus 17. Water comes from the rock at the top of that chapter, but then they have their first attack. If you go to Exodus chapter 17, verse 8, here's what happens. So the Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. And Moses said to Joshua, choose some of our men to go out to fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands. So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. And as long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. And when Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side and one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. Okay, I'm looking for something here real quick. We had it here just a bit ago, but they took it from me. Okay, well, this will work. All right, I need a volunteer. Who wants to be a volunteer? Anybody want to volunteer? Okay, come on up. This would be great. Thank you. Got to tell everybody your name. Aaron. Wow.
And yes, I was named after Aaron from the Bible.
You were? Oh, this will be good. Okay, so we're going to pretend this is the staff that Moses had to hold up, okay? So you got to take that and hold it up over your head, okay? Now, he said he had to do this till sunset, okay? From sunrise to sunset. So, again, the thing is we're kind of a conservative church. You know, the Pentecostals can hold up their hands a lot longer than we can, you know, us conservatives. After 2 songs, we're always hurting, you know, I got to get to the gym. So, anyway, so he's holding up this thing. Now, is it starting to get heavy yet?
Not really.
Not really? Okay, so I'll keep going. So, how about now? No? He's like, I'm never volunteering again. I'm never coming to this church again. So, you're used to this. 4 kids. Oh, you take them and you throw them down. I did that too. So the fact of the matter is that, so Aaron has to hold, or Moses has to hold up this rod. And he says to Joshua, okay, so these Amalekites are attacking us. So you got to understand, the Amalekites were not just some Bedouin thug tribe. This was a major empire. And as Moses and the people are coming up out of the Red Sea, they bring their flocks and their herds. Well, as they walk into the land of where the Amalekites are, they begin to take the pasture land of the Amalekites, because again, there's only so much room to feed animals. And so the Amalekites take that as, hey, they're infiltrating our territory. And so the book of Deuteronomy says that the Amalekites snuck around from the backside and began to knock off the weak and sick ones. And so Moses sees this, tells Joshua, okay, let's gather up. This is our first big fight. Gather everyone, take and fight the Amalekites. I'm going to go up on the hill and I'm going to hold my hands up. And as long as my hands are raised to the Lord, we're going to get some victories. But if they start to drop, it's going to be a problem. So Moses starts just like this. He's holding his hands up, and who's winning the fight as long as his hands are raised? Joshua. But Moses knows that he just can't do this alone. So as his hands begin to slip, he needs some help. Now who comes and helps him? Two guys. Who are they? Aaron and Hur. Very good. So Aaron and Hur come. So I need an Aaron and I need a Hur. Anybody? Anybody want to? Huh? Wes will come up. Wes, why don't you be Hur? Yeah, you're a good Hur. All right. Right. No sweat. Because Kobe's going to be Aaron. Oh, you're going to come on up. Okay, come on up right here. Come on up. Oh, okay. Sorry, you're too slow. Okay. So this is Aaron. Now, usually when I've heard this story taught, it's always a story about encouragement. You know, like this is so encouraging, you know, what's happening here, because, you know, what's going to happen is he starts to get tired. It's already starting to come down just a little bit, right? So he's like, well, what's happening? What's going on? Well, Joshua's army is like, hey, man, you got to get that thing raised up. And he's trying, but he's getting tired. Now, so what they do is they get a stone. So we're going to scoot this right from behind you here. We're going to have you stand in front. Okay, and he's going to get to sit down on this stone. Aaron and Hur grab this stone so he can sit down. Yep, you can sit down on it. Yeah. Okay, so that helps a little bit, right? Okay, because you're 80 years old at this point. It's pretty tough to hold this thing up. And so now his arms start to drop. So what do? They help hold it up, right? So you guys are going to help him hold that thing up. Okay? And this is their job. Now, again, this would be a great lesson on encouragement. I've heard it before. It's great. We're always holding up our brothers, praying for them, lifting them up. And as we do that, the Lord's kingdom grows and da-da-da-da. All right? That's the easy way. If I'm Aaron and I'm holding up Moses' arms, what's going through my head? If I'm not in a healthy place, what am I thinking? Yeah, so Aaron probably thinks he should be the one doing this, right? I mean, if I'm Aaron, this is what I'm thinking. You know what? All my life I've been holding up this guy's stinking arms. All my life this guy's had somebody have to help him out. He can't even hold up a stick. The boy can't even hold up a stick. He needs two people to help him. He's got to sit down and let's all coddle Moses. Let's make sure Moses is doing okay because, you know, he needs help. He needs people doing this for him. You know, if I was Moses, I wouldn't need all this stuff. I could do this. Moses, you understand what I'm saying here? Anybody have this kind of internal, no, I don't want to see a show of hands, but have you ever had this kind of internal dialogue? Have you got that family member that always needs help with the bills, always needs somebody, always needs a place to stay, always is struggling, always this and always that. And you find that you're the one that always has to be the one to be the strong one. You're always the one that has to lift their arms up. You're always the one. You have to be the strong one. And you start to wonder, who's going to be strong for me? You know what? I don't need anybody strong. I don't care about anyone. You know what? This should be me. All right. Let's give these guys a big hand right here. It gets tiring after a while. It does. All right. So what happens is I get the sense Aaron. They say, Mike, you're really reading a lot into this. Well, let me tell you why I come at it from this angle. Okay. Go to Exodus 32. We've talked about the story a couple of times now, but I want to take it from a different angle, and that's the story of the golden calf. So Moses, in the midst of his ministry, is called to go up to the top of a mountain and speak with God. And so he's doing that. He's doing that for a number of days, 40 days. I mean, he's up there for a while. And as he's up there, the people down below are starting to get a little antsy. They're starting to wonder what's going on. And so when you get to 32 verse 1, listen how the story goes. It says, when the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and they said, "Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses, who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't even know what has happened to him." So they come to Aaron, his brother, and say, "Hey, listen, we want you to make some idols for us. We don't even know what happened to Moses. Whoever that guy is." But you would think, if Aaron was in a healthy place, and he didn't have this stuff going on in his heart, you would think Aaron's response would be, "Hey, all of you need to simmer down. That's my brother we're talking about. He's doing what God has called him to do. So y'all go back to your tents. It's going to be fine. You're not messing with my brother." Is that what Aaron does? Don't you find it at least slightly curious that he is so quick with a problem-solving solution? He's like, "You know what? I'm glad you brought this up." In fact, he goes in verse 2, Aaron answered them, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me." Bring them to who? Bring them to me. You know what? My brother is gone. I don't know if he is coming back. But guess what? Now's my time. Now I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you how to lead this place. Because you know what? My brother, he's always been weak. He's always, who knows what's going on up there. But I'm going to take his spot because I'm smarter than him. I'm stronger than him. I've always been doing this. I've always been carrying his backside. Not any longer. I'm in charge now. So everybody, take your gold, take your earrings, take all this stuff, bring it to me. And what Moses does, he takes that gold, he shapes it into a calf. We talked about this a few weeks ago. He makes this calf. And then it says, when Israel saw, this is verse 5, saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and he announced, "Tomorrow there will be festivals to the Lord." So the next day the people rose early, sacrificed burnt offerings, and presented fellowship offerings. And afterward they sat down to eat and to drink, and they got up to indulge in revelry. It became an absolute nightmare. As Aaron says, here's how we're going to do this. I want you to bring it in. I'm going to make this idol. Everyone, we're going to have festivals and days. It's going to be fun time at Aaron's place. And we're going to have an awesome time. Moses was, you know what? Let's forget about that guy. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to show that I'm not just the second guy anymore. I'm not just a support guy. I should be the one that gets all this. This has not been fair, but now's my time. And that's what he does. Well, the outcome becomes pretty heinous pretty fast. The people begin to eat, and the people begin to drink, and drink, and drink, and drink. To where it's a frat party out of control. And I think Aaron realizes he is way over his head. In verse 32, Moses comes down from the mountain and he says to Aaron, listen, this is such a powerful line. He said to Aaron, "What did these people do to you that you led them into such a great sin?" It's almost like Moses comes down off the mountain. He looks at Aaron, who I don't think Moses knows that Aaron is feeling so much animosity towards him. And he looks at him. He almost puts his hands on his shoulders. He says, "Aaron, what happened? What did they do to you? How did they make you do such a thing like this? This isn't who you are. This isn't you." But unbeknownst to Moses, Aaron has been carrying around this resentment for years. Aaron's response, classic. "Oh, don't be angry, my lord," Aaron answered. "You know how prone these people are to evil. They said to me, 'Make us gods who will go before us, as for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt. We don't know what's happened to him.' So I told them, 'Whoever has any gold, take it off.' Then they gave me the gold, and I threw it in the fire, and bloop, out came a calf." We've talked about that before. It's such a classic line. Aaron says, he begins backtracking. And then Moses saw the people were running wild and that Aaron had let them go out of control. And so they became a laughing stock to their enemies. He says to him, Aaron, do you see what's happened? I mean, our enemies are looking at us right now, and we are a joke. It goes on to say that Aaron then calls the Levites together. Well, what he does is he says, anybody that's not involved in this, please come see me right now. And it says all the Levites came to him. Now, Aaron is from the tribe of what? Anybody know? Levi. So it says, anybody that's not involved with this, could you please come see me? And all of Aaron's buddies come except for Aaron sitting off to the side. And they all look at Aaron, they're like, man, what happened? And they all come to Moses, and Moses says, all right, here's the deal. Grab your swords. You find anyone acting stupid, kill them. And that's what they do. And Aaron has to watch as people are being killed because of what he did. Not only that, but it later says that Moses puts himself before the Lord and says, Lord, please don't destroy us. Please forgive us. And the Lord says, we're going to be okay, but the thing is that I'm going to send a plague to come across the land. And if you read verse 32, verse 35, it says, and the Lord struck the people with a plague because of what they did with the calf Aaron had made. Because Aaron made that calf, people are slowly dying of disease. And I've got to tell you, if I'm Aaron and I'm walking around, I'm just in this fog as I'm watching people die because I thought I was so smart. Like I was so much smarter than everybody else. That I knew better. That this was mine. This was supposed to be mine at any cost. Had a friend tell me one time, he said, you know, envy, Mike, envy is just hostile self-pity. Envy is simply hostile self-pity. That when you feel so bad about your life, you feel so angry about what God has done to you, that envy rises up when we see other people thinking they have what we should and we want to hurt them. It's a hostile form of the fact that I just hate who I am. And I hate where God has me. And I hate it so much, I'm going to take it out on you. That's Aaron. And what happens is, when he has the opportunity, and he has it there, he zings it. He finally has the chance to say, you know what, Moses? You know, you think you're all that. You're thinking this. Well, guess what? Now I've got something on you. Now I've got an angle on you. Boom. And he takes over the leadership only to find out that it totally falls apart. Totally falls apart. Have you ever in your life got the goods on somebody and you just didn't like them so much? You just hated. Maybe you never use the word hate, but you just don't like them so much that when you got the goods on them, you used it against them. You said, well, at least I didn't do blank like you did. And you out them. At least I didn't go and do that. And for a split second, that self-righteous part of you gets fed and you're like, but I didn't do that. But like Paul says, it's sweet to the mouth, but it's bitter to the what? Anybody know this proverb that Paul teaches? It's bitter to the stomach. Because the moment we out them, once the dust settles, we get to see all the damage we did. How much we hurt a person and we tore them apart. And you know what? It really didn't have anything to do with them. And you feel worse off than when you started. I think that's Aaron. I think the golden calf incident, you have a man that's absolutely broken. So what's the Exodus for Aaron? What's it for him? Well, there's a key verse that comes up. It's not in the book of Exodus, but it's in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 9, verses 19 and 20. And it's Moses retelling the story of the golden calf. And as he gets towards the end of the story as to exactly what happened, he writes this in the book. He says, "But again the Lord listened to me." This is Moses talking. "But again the Lord listened to me, and the Lord was angry enough with Aaron to destroy him." So Moses says God was so ticked off, and rightly so, that he was going to kill my brother. He was going to kill Aaron. But at that time, I prayed for Aaron too. Moses prays for Aaron. If you're Aaron, all the feelings you had towards Moses, all the and then you go and you really stick it to him. You would think Moses' response should be the same as that of his, right? He's going to kill me. And when Moses comes up, puts his hand on Aaron's shoulder and says, "Brother, I pray for you. I talk to God that you would be forgiven." If you're Aaron, what are you feeling when you hear that from your brother? What do you feel? Feel guilty? What else? Regret? Feel some shame? You know, the prodigal son's a funny story. I used to think for years that